He wasn't supposed to inherit anything that still remembered his name. Before we begin, tell me, have you ever walked into a place that felt like it was already watching you? Ethan Cole doesn't believe in ghosts, not the kind people whisper about in old towns or write into stories, but he does believe in silence, the kind that lingers too long after a war ends, the kind that follows you home and settles into the corners of your life without asking permission, and on a cold October morning just outside Asheville, North Carolina. That silence is exactly what greets him as he pulls his truck onto a narrow gravel road that winds through overgrown pines toward a property he never asked for, never expected, and never fully understood. The engine cuts, the world goes still, and beside him, Rex, a 6-year-old German shepherd with a sable coat dark as wet earth and eyes that catch light like amber glass, doesn't move, doesn't blink, just stares forward as if something beyond the rusted iron gate has already called his name. The air smells like damp wood and something older, something faintly metallic. Like time left untouched, Ethan exhales slowly, gripping the steering wheel a second longer than necessary, the way a man does when he's trying to convince himself that turning back would be weakness, and he's never been that kind of man. Not in uniform, not now. It's just a house, he mutters under his breath, though even as the words leave him, they feel thin, like they don't belong here. The letter from the attorney sits folded in his jacket pocket, edges worn from being read too many times. Each sentence still echoing with the same quiet weight. His grandmother, Evelyn Cole, deceased, no surviving heirs willing to claim the estate, property transferred in full to Ethan Cole, United States Marine Corps, retired. He hadn't seen her in over 15 years, not since he was a kid standing on her porch while she watched him like she already knew something he didn't, something she never explained. Rex shifts slightly now, a low breath leaving his chest, not quite a growl, not quite a warning, but enough to pull Ethan's attention back to the present. The gate creaks as he pushes it open, metal scraping against stone with a sound that carries too far into the trees, and the moment he steps onto the property, something changes, not loud, not sudden, just a subtle shift in the air, like the land itself is taking note. The mansion rises ahead through the branches, 3 stories of weathered wood and shadowed windows, its structure still strong but worn by years of being left alone, curtains drawn tight, paint faded into a dull gray that almost blends with the sky. Ethan takes a few steps forward, boots crunching over gravel, Rex now at his side, posture rigid, ears forward, every movement deliberate. The wind brushes through the trees, but the house doesn't seem to move with it, doesn't breathe the same way everything else does, and for the first time since he left the service, since he told himself he was done with places that held secrets, Ethan feels that old instinct return, the one that says nothing here is accidental, nothing here is empty, and whatever his grandmother left behind, it wasn't just a house. The front door does not open easily, not because it is locked, but because the wood has swollen with years of rain and silence, and when Ethan finally forces it inward, the sound echoes too long through the hollow interior, as if the house has been waiting to hear footsteps again. The air inside is colder than outside by at least 10 degrees, carrying the faint scent of dust, old paper, and something like dried lavender that lingers in the background. Subtle but deliberate, and Rex pauses at the threshold, muscles tight, nose lifting as he takes in the space before stepping in slowly, one paw at a time, like a trained scout entering unfamiliar ground. Ethan follows, closing the door behind him, and the light shifts immediately, dimming as though the walls themselves absorb it, leaving only thin beams of grey daylight slipping through the drawn curtains. The floorboards creak under his boots, not sharply, but with a tired, drawn-out complaint, and every step feels louder than it should, amplified by the emptiness around him. He moves through what used to be a living room, furniture still in place beneath white sheets that have gathered a thin layer of dust, the outlines of chairs and tables frozen in time like silhouettes of a life paused mid-sentence. On the far wall hangs a row of framed photographs, and something about them pulls his attention before he even realizes he has changed direction. Rex does not follow right away, instead standing near the center of the room, head turning slightly, ears twitching at sounds too subtle for Ethan to hear, until finally he steps closer. Staying just behind him, Ethan reaches out and lifts the edge of one of the frames, brushing away dust with the side of his thumb, and there she is, his grandmother, younger than he remembers, standing on the same porch outside, her posture straight, her expression calm but distant, as if she had always been looking past the camera at something no one else could see. Beside her in the photo is a man Ethan does not recognize, tall, well-dressed, his face partially turned away, But there is something about the way he stands that feels intentional, like he did not want to be fully seen. Ethan frowned slightly, lowering the frame, and for a moment the silence presses in tighter, heavier, until Rex lets out a low, almost inaudible sound deep in his chest. Ethan glances down at him, noticing the dog is no longer looking at the photographs but at the hallway to the right, a narrow stretch of darkness leading deeper into the house. There is nothing visibly there, no movement, no sound. And yet Rex does not look away, his body angled toward it with a focus that is too precise to ignore. Ethan straightens slowly, instinct creeping back into his posture, the same instinct that once told him when something was not right long before anyone else noticed. He does not speak, does not call out, because some part of him understands that whatever this place holds does not respond to noise, it responds to attention. The hallway seems longer than it should be, stretching farther into shadow than the structure outside suggested. And as Ethan takes a step toward it, the floor shifts slightly under his weight, not breaking, not giving way, but enough to remind him that this house is not as still as it looks. Rex moves ahead of him now, leading without command, his pace slow but certain, stopping once at the edge of the hallway and looking back as if to make sure Ethan is still there, still following. Ethan nods faintly, more to himself than to the dog, and continues forward, the light fading with each step until the only thing guiding him is the outline of Rex's form and the quiet, steady sound of his breathing. Somewhere deeper in the house, a faint noise settles into the air, not sudden, not sharp, but present enough to feel like a memory trying to surface, and Ethan realizes, with a clarity that settles into his chest, that this place is not abandoned. It is holding something, waiting not to scare him, not to harm him, but to be found. The hallway narrows as Ethan follows Rex deeper into the house, the air growing stiller with each step, as if even the dust has settled into place and refused to move for years. The walls are lined with dark wood panels, scratched faintly in places where time has left its fingerprints, and the temperature drops again, subtle but undeniable, enough that Ethan can feel it through his jacket, a quiet chill that does not come from outside. Rex stops abruptly about 15 feet down the corridor. His body rigid, head lowered slightly, ears forward, and for a moment he does not move at all, just listens, as if something beneath the silence is speaking in a language only he understands. Ethan slows behind him, his breathing steady but shallow, eyes scanning the space ahead, and that is when he notices the door, set slightly into the wall on the left, almost hidden by the way the shadows gather around it. It is different from the others he passed, smaller, older, with a handle that looks untouched, the brass dull to a soft grey. Rex steps closer to it without hesitation, nose brushing along the edge of the frame, then pausing right at the seam where the door meets the wall, and he lets out a quiet sound, not a bark, not a whine, but something in between, something that feels like recognition. Ethan studies the door, his mind running through possibilities, none of them fully formed, but all of them pointing to the same conclusion, that this is not just another room. He reaches out slowly, fingers brushing against the surface, and feels the difference immediately. The wood here is colder, denser, as if it has been sealed away from the rest of the house. The handle resists at first when he turns it, not locked, just stiff from disuse, and when it finally gives, it does so with a quiet click that seems louder than it should be. The door opens inward just a few inches, enough for a thin line of darkness to spill out, deeper than the shadows in the hallway, and a faint smell escapes with it, not unpleasant, but old, like paper stored too long in a closed space. Rex steps back slightly, not out of fear, but as if making room, allowing Ethan to go first. Ethan hesitates for half a second, then pushes the door open wider, and the beam of grey light from the hallway stretches into the room, revealing the edges of something small and enclosed. It is not a bedroom, not a closet, but something in between. A narrow space with a low ceiling, no windows, and shelves built into the walls from floor to about 5 feet high. The shelves are lined with boxes, neatly arranged, each one labeled in careful handwriting that has faded but not disappeared. Ethan steps inside, the floor beneath him solid, unmoving, and for the first time since entering the house, the sound of his own breathing feels too loud. Rex follows just to the doorway, sitting down without being told, eyes fixed on Ethan as if waiting for what comes next. Ethan reaches for the nearest box, brushing dust from the top, and reads the label slowly, his voice barely more than a whisper. Records, followed by a date from over 20 years ago. His brow tightens, and he opens the lid, revealing stacks of papers, photographs, and small envelopes, all organized with a precision that speaks of intention, not neglect. He lifts one photograph, holding it closer to the light, and the image sends a quiet tension through his chest. It is the same house, years earlier, the paint fresh, the windows open, and standing on the front steps is his grandmother again, older than in the previous photo but still strong, her posture unchanged, and beside her, the same man, this time facing the camera. Directly, Ethan studies his face, trying to place it, and something about the man's eyes feels familiar, not in recognition, but in the way they hold a certain kind of distance, the kind Ethan has seen before in men who carry things they do not speak about. Behind the photograph, tucked into the envelope, is a small folded note, and when Ethan opens it, the handwriting is unmistakable, precise, deliberate, his grandmother's. He does not read it out loud, not yet, but as his eyes move across the first line, something shifts inside him, not fear, not confusion, but a slow, steady realization that whatever this house holds was never meant to stay hidden forever. It was meant to wait for someone who would understand what to do with it, and as he stands there, the paper trembling slightly between his fingers, Rex watching from the doorway, the silence around them feels different now, not empty, not watching, but patient, as if it has finally been acknowledged. The paper feels thinner than it should, worn not by time alone but by the weight of what it carries, and as Ethan's eyes move across the lines, the room seems to settle into a deeper stillness, as if even the air is listening. The handwriting is steady, unmistakably his grandmother's, each letter formed with care, without hesitation, like she knew exactly who would be reading it and when. If you are standing here, Ethan, then you have already done the hardest part. The note begins, and something about those words tightens his chest in a way he cannot explain, because it does not feel like a greeting, it feels like recognition. He exhales slowly, reading on, his voice silent but present in his mind as if she is speaking directly to him. This house was never meant to be a home, not in the way people understand it. It was meant to keep something safe until the right hands could carry it forward. And as his eyes reach the end of that sentence, he lowers the paper slightly. Glancing around the narrow room, the shelves, the boxes, the quiet order of everything, and for the first time he understands that none of this was left behind, it was left for him. Rex shifts at the doorway, letting out a soft breath, his gaze still fixed on Ethan, steady, patient, and Ethan nods faintly, almost instinctively, before returning to the note. There are things in this world that do not disappear when ignored, they only wait, and some truths are too important to be buried with the people who tried to protect them. The words are simple, but they carry a weight that settles deeper with each line, and Ethan feels something familiar begin to surface, not fear, not doubt, but purpose, the kind he has not felt since leaving the service. He folds the note carefully, placing it back on top of the box, and begins to sort through the contents with a steadier hand, pulling out folders one by one, each labeled with dates, locations, and names that do not immediately mean anything to him but feel deliberate, connected. One folder in particular catches his attention, thicker than the others, marked only with a single word, property, and beneath it, a date that predates even the earliest records in the room. He opens it slowly, revealing documents, old blueprints, and a series of photographs taken from different angles around the house. But what draws him in is not the structure, it is what appears in the background of several images. The same man from before, standing at varying distances, never the focus, always present. Ethan studies the photos closely, his brow tightening as patterns begin to form, the man appearing not just once, but repeatedly, across different years, in different positions. Always near the edges, always watching. Rex lets out a low, quiet sound again, this time stepping one paw into the room, his nose lifting slightly as if catching something new in the air, and Ethan feels it too, not a sound, not a movement, but a shift, subtle and slow, like something just out of sight has changed its position. He straightens, holding one of the photographs in his hand, and turns slightly toward the hallway, listening. But the house remains as it was, silent, unmoving, patient. Still, the feeling does not leave, it lingers just beneath the surface of everything, and Ethan understands now that this is not about what happened in the past alone, it is about what was never finished. He looks back down at the documents, his grip tightening just enough to ground himself, and for the first time since stepping onto the property, a thought forms with clarity, not a question, not a doubt, but a decision, that whatever his grandmother protected here, whatever she waited all these years to pass on, it was not meant to stay hidden any longer, and whether he fully understands it yet or not, he is already part of it. The photograph does not leave his hand, even as the minutes stretch longer than they should, and Ethan finds himself staring at the same face again and again, searching for something that refuses to reveal itself all at once. The man in the images is not smiling, not posing, not even acknowledging the camera, and yet his presence feels intentional, as if he knew exactly where to stand to remain unseen while still being there. Ethan lowers the photo slowly, placing it beside the open folder, and reaches for another document beneath it, this one thicker, sealed once with an adhesive strip that has long since dried and peeled away. As he opens it, a folded sheet slips out, heavier paper this time, official, with a faint watermark barely visible when it catches the dim light. Rex shifts again, stepping fully into the room now, his nails clicking softly against the floor before settling into stillness. His gaze moving not between Ethan and the hallway, but toward the shelves themselves, as if something within them carries a scent he cannot ignore. Ethan unfolds the document, scanning the header first, and the words there stop him just enough to draw a slow breath from his chest, not sharp, not startled, but measured, controlled, the way he learned to respond when something mattered more than it first appeared. The document references land ownership, zoning disputes, and something labeled as restricted oversight, a phrase that feels deliberately vague, and as his eyes move further down, he begins to see the pattern, multiple signatures, dates spanning over a decade, and at the center of it all, one name repeated more often than the others, the same name tied to the man in the photographs. Ethan leans back slightly, the weight of the paper shifting in his hand, and for a moment he closes his eyes, not to escape, but to align the pieces forming in his mind, because this is not random, this is structured, intentional, and far more deliberate than a simple inheritance. He opens his eyes again, looking down at Rex, who now stands beside him, silent but present, his amber eyes steady, reflecting the same quiet awareness that has guided him since the moment they stepped onto the property. Ethan exhales slowly, setting the document down with care, and begins moving through the rest of the folder, page by page, each one adding another layer, another connection, until the outline of something larger begins to take shape, not fully clear, but undeniable. There are letters, copies of correspondence between his grandmother and individuals whose titles suggest authority but whose names do not appear anywhere outside these pages, and in each exchange there is a tone, restrained but firm, as if she was negotiating something that could not be spoken of directly. One letter in particular stands out, handwritten, shorter than the others, and addressed simply to Evelyn, without formality, without distance. Ethan picks it up carefully, the paper softer, worn at the edges, and as he reads, the words settle into him with a quiet gravity, not urgent, not forceful, but certain. You were right to keep it hidden, but you cannot keep it forever, the letter reads. And beneath it, a final line, written darker, pressed harder into the page. There will come a time when someone must choose to uncover it, or it will be lost in a way that cannot be undone. Ethan lowers the letter slowly, his fingers tightening just enough to crease the edge before he relaxes his grip, placing it back with the others. The room feels different now, not because it has changed, but because he has, because the pieces are no longer separate, they are beginning to align, forming something that no longer feels like a mystery, but a responsibility. Rex steps closer, pressing lightly against Ethan's leg for just a moment, grounding, steady, and Ethan rests his hand briefly against the dog's neck, feeling the warmth, the life, the certainty that stands. In contrast to everything else in this house, he straightens, looking once more at the shelves, at the boxes, at the quiet order left behind, and understands now that this is only the beginning, that whatever his grandmother built here was not meant to be discovered all at once, but piece by piece, step by step, the way trust is earned, not given. And as the silence settles again around them, no longer heavy, no longer uncertain, but almost expectant, Ethan realizes that the house is no longer waiting for someone to arrive, it is waiting for someone to continue. The realization does not come all at once, it settles in slowly, like dust disturbed and then resettling into a new pattern, and Ethan stands there in the narrow room with the document spread before him, feeling something shift from uncertainty into clarity, not complete, not comfortable, but enough to move forward. He gathers a few of the key papers, the photograph, the handwritten note, the letter addressed to Evelyn, and holds them together in his hand, not as separate pieces anymore, but as parts of the same truth beginning to surface. Rex watches him closely, head slightly tilted, as if sensing the change not in the room, but in Ethan himself, and when Ethan steps back toward the hallway, the dog moves with him immediately, no hesitation, no command needed. The air in the corridor feels different now, less heavy, but more focused, like a path that has been chosen rather than stumbled upon. Ethan walks back into the main room. The covered furniture, the dim light, the quiet stillness all unchanged, and yet nothing feels the same as when he first stepped inside. He sets the papers down carefully on an old wooden table near the center of the room, brushing aside a thin layer of dust, and spreads them out again, this time with intention, aligning them side by side, studying the connections with a steadier gaze. The name from the documents lingers in his mind, repeating itself in a rhythm he cannot ignore, and as he looks at the photograph again, at the man standing just behind his grandmother, something clicks into place, not recognition of identity, but recognition of role, of position, of influence. This man was not just present, he was involved, deeply, consistently, and whatever this property was tied to, he had been part of it for years. Ethan exhales slowly, running a hand across his jaw as he steps back, giving himself just enough distance to see the full picture, and that is when his eyes catch something else, something he had missed before, a small marking on the blueprint partially visible beneath the stack of papers. He reaches for it, pulling it free, and unfolds it across the table, the paper larger, more detailed, showing not just the layout of the house above ground, but something beneath it, a secondary structure, incomplete, hidden, with sections marked but not labeled. Rex steps closer again, his nose hovering just above the edge of the blueprint, tracing along one particular section as if drawn to it, and Ethan follows the line with his finger, stopping at a point marked only with a small symbol, one that does not appear anywhere else on the page. He leans in slightly, studying it, and feels that same quiet certainty return, the same instinct that guided him through situations where answers were never given directly, only implied. This was not just a house with records, it was a structure built around something intentionally concealed, something his grandmother had protected, not by hiding it completely, but by ensuring only the right person would understand how to find it. Ethan straightens slowly, the pieces aligning more clearly now, and he looks down at Rex, who meets his gaze without hesitation, steady, grounded, present. "You knew," Ethan murmurs quietly, not expecting a response, but acknowledging what has been there from the beginning, that Rex sensed this before he ever did. The dog does not move, does not react, just holds that gaze, and in that silence, Ethan finds something he has not felt in a long time, not pressure, not fear, but direction. He turns back toward the hallway, then further, toward the deeper parts of the house he has not yet explored, and as he picks up the blueprint, folding it carefully, the decision settles fully into place, no longer forming, no longer uncertain. Whatever his grandmother left behind is not just a memory, not just a warning, it is a path, and he is already on it. The house does not creak as he moves this time, does not resist, and somewhere in the quiet space around him, there is the faintest sense that something has shifted from waiting to guiding, from silence to purpose, and Ethan steps forward, no longer searching, but following. The deeper part of the house does not reveal itself all at once, it unfolds slowly as Ethan moves past the familiar rooms into spaces that feel less lived in and more preserved, as if they were meant to be passed through rather than occupied, and the light grows thinner here, filtered through narrow windows that have not been opened in years, casting long pale strips across the floor that shift slightly as the afternoon begins to fade. Rex moves ahead again, not rushing, not hesitant, but deliberate, his path aligning almost perfectly with the direction marked on the blueprint, and Ethan follows without questioning it now, his trust no longer something he has to think about. The hallway turns once, then again, leading toward the back of the house where the air feels cooler, denser, and there is a faint scent of earth beneath the dust and wood, something subtle but grounding, like the house itself is anchored deeper than it appears. They stop at a door that looks like any other. At first glance, plain wood, simple handle, but the space around it feels different, quieter in a way that draws attention rather than avoids it, and Rex stands directly in front of it, still, focused, his gaze fixed on the center as if he is seeing more than just the surface. Ethan steps beside him, unfolding the blueprint again, comparing the lines, the angles, the placement, and there it is, the mark he traced earlier, aligning almost perfectly with this location. His hand rests on the handle, but he does not turn it right away, not out of fear but out of respect for the moment, because whatever lies beyond this door is not just another room, it is the reason everything else was arranged the way it was. He exhales slowly, then turns the handle, and this time the door opens without resistance, smooth, almost prepared, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. The air that rises from below is cooler, carrying that same faint scent of earth more strongly now, mixed with something else, something clean, preserved, untouched by the decay that has settled in the rest of the house. Rex steps forward without hesitation, placing one paw on the first step, then another, looking back briefly at Ethan before continuing down, his movement steady, confident. Ethan follows, one hand brushing lightly against the wall as he descends, the wooden steps solid beneath his weight, each one giving a soft, muted sound that fades quickly into the space below. The light from above diminishes with each step, replaced gradually by a softer, ambient glow that seems to come from somewhere deeper, not bright, but enough to guide them forward. When Ethan reaches the bottom, he pauses, taking in the space before him, and what he sees does not match what he expected. It is not unfinished, not abandoned, but carefully constructed, a room built with intention, the walls reinforced, the air dry, the space organized with the same precision he saw in the hidden room upstairs. But here it feels more immediate, more central. Along one wall are shelves, similar to the ones above, but fewer, holding only a handful of items, each placed with clear purpose, and at the center of the room stands a single desk, worn but sturdy, with a chair positioned neatly behind it as if someone had just stepped away. Ethan steps closer, his movement slower now, more deliberate, and Rex circles once before settling near the base of the desk, his posture relaxed but attentive, as if this place, whatever it is, aligns with something instinctual within him. Ethan places the blueprint down on the desk, his eye scanning the surface, and there, resting in the center, is a small wooden box, darker than the desk itself, polished, cared for, its presence unmistakable not because of its size, but because of the way everything else in the room seems to point toward it. Ethan reaches out, his fingers hovering just above the lid for a brief moment, and in that pause, everything he has seen, everything he has read, everything he has begun to understand settles into a single, quiet realization that this is not just the end of what his grandmother left behind, it is the beginning of what she intended for him to carry forward, and without hesitation now, he places his hand on the box, ready to open what has been waiting for him all along. The lid does not resist when Ethan lifts it, it opens smoothly, almost effortlessly, as if it has been waiting not just for hands, but for his hands, and inside there is no clutter, no excess, only a single stack of items placed with deliberate care, a sealed envelope resting on top, thicker than the others he has seen, its surface marked with his name in the same steady handwriting he recognized immediately. Ethan pauses for just a moment, not out of hesitation, but because something about this feels final in a way the rest did not, like crossing a line that cannot be uncrossed, and Rex shifts slightly beside him, not anxious, not alert, just present, his breathing slow and steady, grounding. Ethan picks up the envelope, the weight of it more than paper alone, and breaks the seal carefully, sliding out the contents, a letter and a smaller photograph tucked behind it. He looks at the photograph first, instinctively, and this time the image is clearer, closer, his grandmother standing beside that same man, but now there is no distance between them, no attempt to stay out of view, and for the first time Ethan sees something he had missed before, not in the man, but in her expression, not guarded, not distant, but resolved, like someone who has already made a choice and accepted what comes after. He sets the photograph down and unfolds the letter, his eyes moving slowly across the lines as the words begin to take shape in his mind. Ethan, if you have come this far, then you already understand more than I could ever explain in a single letter. It begins, and he feels that same quiet pull again, not emotional in the way most things are, but deeper, steadier, like something aligning inside him. This house was never mine, not truly, it was entrusted to me by someone who believed that truth, no matter how inconvenient, must survive beyond the people who carry it, and as Ethan reads on, the pieces that once felt scattered begin to lock into place with a clarity that leaves no room for doubt. The man in the photographs was not just involved, he was the source, the one who brought something forward that could not be ignored, something tied to land, to decisions made far beyond this property, decisions that affected more than anyone ever admitted. He came to me because he knew I would not turn away. The letter continues, and I stayed because I knew one day someone would have to continue what I could not finish. And Ethan exhales slowly, the weight of those words settling into him not as pressure, but as understanding. He reads the final lines more carefully, as if each word matters in a way that cannot be replaced. You were never chosen by accident, Ethan. I watched you from a distance, not to interfere, but to see who you would become when no one was guiding you. And you became someone who does not walk away when something feels wrong, someone who listens even when there is no voice, and that is why this now belongs to you. The room is silent when he finishes, not empty, not heavy, just still, and Ethan lowers the letter slowly, placing it beside the photograph on the desk, his hand lingering there for a moment as if anchoring himself to what he has just read. Rex steps closer, pressing lightly against his side again, and Ethan rests his hand on the dog's back without looking down, his gaze fixed on the space in front of him, not searching anymore, not questioning, but seeing. Everything that once felt hidden now feels revealed in a way that does not need explanation. The house, the documents, the photographs, the room itself, all of it part of something that was never meant to stay buried, only protected until the right moment. Ethan straightened slowly, folding the letter once more with care, and for the first time since arriving, there is no hesitation in his movement. No pause between thought and action. The truth is no longer something he is uncovering, it is something he now carries, and as he looks around the room, at the shelves, the desk, the quiet order left behind, he understands that what his grandmother gave him was never just a place, it was a responsibility shaped by trust, by patience, and by the belief that some things must endure beyond silence, even if only one person at a time is willing to hold them. The morning arrives quietly, not with urgency, not with noise, but with a soft light that finds its way through the tall windows of the house, brushing across the floorboards and settling into the spaces that once felt untouched. And Ethan stands near the front porch with the door open behind him, the cool air carrying the faint scent of pine and distant earth, something steady, something real. Rex steps out first, moving into the yard with a calm, measured pace. His body no longer tense, no longer searching, but grounded, as if whatever question he carried into this place has already been answered. Ethan follows, pausing just beyond the threshold, turning slightly to look back at the house, not with uncertainty, not with doubt, but with a quiet understanding that what it holds is no longer hidden from him, and more importantly, no longer carried alone. The documents remain inside, carefully placed, not locked away, not concealed, but preserved with intention, and the small wooden box rests on the desk below, no longer closed in secrecy, but open in purpose. Ethan exhales slowly, his breath visible in the cool morning air, and for the first time since arriving, there is no weight pressing against his chest, no sense of something unresolved, only a steady awareness of what comes next. He walks a few steps forward, the gravel crunching beneath his boots, and Rex moves alongside him, their pace naturally aligned, neither leading nor following, just together. The land stretches quietly around them, the trees standing tall, the silence no longer empty but full, like something that has finally been allowed to breathe again. Ethan stops near the edge of the property, where the ground slopes slightly downward, and from here the house looks different, less imposing, less distant, not because it has changed, but because he has. He folds his arms loosely, his gaze resting on the structure for a moment longer, and in that stillness, the memory of his grandmother does not feel like something from the past. It feels present, not in a way that lingers, but in a way that remains, steady and certain. Rex sits beside him without being told, his posture relaxed, his attention calm, and Ethan reaches down, resting his hand briefly on the dog's neck, feeling the warmth, the quiet rhythm of life that has stayed constant through everything. There is no need for words, no need to define what this place means now, because it is already understood in the simplest way, that something was protected here not out of fear, but out of faith, and that faith was placed in him long before he ever realized it. Ethan straightened slowly, turning away from the house, not to leave it behind, but to carry it forward in a way that does not require walls or doors or hidden rooms, only the willingness to act when it matters. Rex stands with him, ready without instruction, and together they begin to walk, the path ahead not marked on any map, not outlined in any document, but clear in the only way that truly matters, through the quiet certainty that some truths are not meant to stay buried, and some responsibilities are not meant to be passed on more than once. The house remains behind them, still, steady, no longer waiting, and as the light continues to rise over the trees, there is a sense, almost imperceptible, that what needed to be found has been found, and what needed to continue already has, carried not in words, not in records, but in the simple, enduring choice to do what is right, even when no one is watching.